On a seemingly ordinary Friday morning in January 2017, a Singapore property agent made a decision that would destroy 3 generations of 2 families forever. What began as an argument about unpaid school fees would escalate into one of Singapore's most shocking familicides in recent memory. By the time authorities discovered the truth 8 days later, on Chinese New Year morning, 2 innocent lives had been lost, an unborn child would never see daylight, and a man's desperate attempts to hide his crimes would unravel in the most devastating way possible. This is the story of how financial pressure, pride, and a moment of uncontrollable rage led to the Woodlands double murder, a case that would grip Singapore and ultimately end with an execution in 2025. Teo Ghim Heng, known to his colleagues as Eric Teo, wasn't someone you'd expect to make headlines for all the wrong reasons. In December 2009, he married Choong Pei Shan in what appeared to be a fresh start for both of them. This wasn't the first marriage for either party, but they seemed determined to make it work. The couple's journey to parenthood was heartbreaking. Choong suffered multiple miscarriages before finally giving birth to their daughter, Ning, in 2013. The little girl became the center of their world, a precious gift after so much loss. During his peak years as a property agent, Teo was living what many would consider the Singapore dream. Earning between $10,000 and $15,000 monthly, he was successful, respected, and seemed to have it all figured out. Colleagues described him as efficient, sociable, and committed. To his family, he appeared to be the perfect husband and father. But beneath this polished exterior, cracks were already forming. Teo was a private man who kept his struggles to himself. His younger brother, Teo Nam Thia, and mother, Chong Goi Kiao, later revealed that he never confided in them about personal problems, a decision that became tragically significant. In 2014, Teo's world was shaken when he discovered Choong in bed with another man named Mark Mu. The affair was a devastating blow, but Teo chose to forgive his wife for the sake of their daughter. However, this betrayal planted seeds of doubt and resentment that would later resurface in the most tragic circumstances. By 2016, despite their troubles, the couple was expecting their second child, a son due in May 2017. It should have been a time of joy and anticipation, but instead, it became another source of pressure in their increasingly strained relationship. The year 2015 marked the beginning of Teo's downfall. Singapore's property market cooled significantly, and with it, Teo's substantial income dried up. The man who once earned up to $15,000 monthly suddenly found himself struggling to make ends meet. As his legitimate income decreased, Teo made increasingly desperate choices. He turned to gambling, hoping for a quick solution to his financial woes. Instead, he found himself spiraling deeper into debt. He borrowed money from friends, colleagues, and financial institutions, creating a web of obligations he couldn't fulfill. By January 2017, Teo's debts had reached a staggering $120,000. The man who once lived comfortably was now working as a sales coordinator for just $1,500 a month, barely enough to cover basic living expenses, let alone service his enormous debt. The reality of their situation became impossible to hide. Ning's school fees went unpaid for months. The 4-year-old's education, something that should have been a given, became another casualty of her father's financial mismanagement. Teo considered selling everything, his car, even their family home, to pay off his debts. He asked Choong to take a part-time job to help with expenses, but she declined. In November 2016, overwhelmed by their circumstances, the couple even considered terminating Choong's pregnancy. Only counseling convinced them to proceed with having their son. The pressure reached a breaking point on January 13, 2017, when Teo's creditors came directly to their home demanding payment. This visit exposed the full extent of their financial crisis to Choong, who finally understood just how dire their situation had become. For the next week, the couple argued repeatedly about their finances. The stress was overwhelming both of them, but neither could have imagined how catastrophically things would escalate. Friday, January 20th, 2017, began like any other school day. 4-year-old Ning was getting dressed in her school uniform, preparing for another day of learning and play. She had no idea that her father had received yet another notification from her school principal about unpaid fees totaling $1,700. Teo knew he couldn't pay the fees. Worse, he was terrified of the embarrassment if Ning were asked to leave school because of his failures. In a moment that reveals the depth of his shame, he told his daughter to change out of her uniform and watch television instead. When Choong learned about this latest problem, the couple's simmering tensions exploded into their most heated argument yet. 7 days of financial stress, broken promises, and mounting pressure finally reached a boiling point. According to Teo's later testimony, during this argument, Choong called him a useless husband. But what pushed him over the edge was what happened next. She allegedly asked their 4-year-old daughter to look at her father while she repeated that he was useless. In that moment, something snapped inside Teo Ghim Heng. Years of financial pressure, the shame of his failures, the memory of his wife's affair, and now being humiliated in front of his beloved daughter, it all culminated in an explosion of rage that destroyed 3 lives forever. Teo grabbed a towel and strangled his 6 months pregnant wife. Choong Pei Shan died, along with their unborn son who would never take his first breath. But Teo wasn't finished. 4-year-old Ning, who had been watching television and playing with her toys, became her father's second victim. According to Teo's confession, he told his daughter to join her mother before he strangled her with the same towel, ending the life of the child he claimed to love most in the world. With his wife and daughter dead, Teo faced a horrific reality. But instead of calling for help or confessing his crimes, he embarked on an 8-day campaign of deception and attempted self-destruction. Teo spent his time researching suicide methods online. He tried cutting his wrists, consuming insecticide, and swallowing hundreds of paracetamol tablets. Each attempt failed, leaving him alive to face the consequences of his actions. In a calculated move, Teo wrote 4 suicide notes under both his and Choong's names, trying to make it appear that the couple had agreed to end their lives together with their daughter due to financial stress. The deception showed a level of planning that later undermined his claims of acting in a moment of uncontrollable rage. When family members in Ning's school called asking about Choong and Ning's whereabouts, Teo had ready excuses. They were busy, they were ill, they couldn't come to family gatherings. Each lie bought him more time but also deepened his web of deception. Perhaps most chilling was Teo's manipulation of his wife's Facebook account. He continued posting photos and updates to make it appear that Choong was still alive, creating a digital facade while her body lay decomposing in their bedroom. As Chinese New Year approached, traditionally a time for family reunions, Teo worked frantically to avoid the gatherings that would expose his crimes. He made excuses for why they couldn't attend family dinners and tried to delay holiday visits. But his increasingly strange behavior and constant excuses were raising suspicions, particularly among Choong's family members who knew something wasn't right. January 28, 2017, the first day of Chinese New Year, should have been a time of celebration and family unity. Instead, it became the day that Teo's carefully constructed lies finally collapsed. Choong's brother, Gordon Choong Mun Chen, had grown increasingly suspicious about his sister's absence. As the eldest of the Choong family's 3 children and their only son, he felt responsible for checking on his sister's welfare. When Gordon called Teo that morning, he received yet another excuse. Teo claimed he couldn't come over until 11 a.m. Later, Teo called from a payphone, spinning an elaborate story about being driven out of the house by Choong after an argument. Gordon's suspicions reached a breaking point. Accompanied by another brother-in-law, Chris Lam Kwek Fa, he decided to visit the Woodlands flat personally to check on his sister and niece. When they arrived at the flat and called for Choong and Ning, there was no response. The silence was ominous. Gordon made the decision to force open a window, and immediately, a pungent, unmistakable odor hit them. The smell wasn't just from decomposition, it was from smoke. Teo had started a fire earlier, attempting to destroy evidence of his crimes and possibly to kill himself in the flames. The acrid smell of burned materials mixed with the stench of death created an overwhelming assault on the senses. Gordon immediately contacted the police and fire department. As first responders arrived at the scene, the full horror of the situation began to unfold. Faced with the inevitable discovery of his crimes, Teo's 8-day facade crumbled. He finally told the people at the scene what everyone was beginning to suspect: his wife and daughter were dead, and it was his fault. On July 2, 2019, more than 2 years after the murders, Teo Ghim Heng finally faced trial in Singapore's High Court. The delay was partly due to the complexity of the case and later extended by the COVID-19 pandemic, but justice would not be denied. Teo was represented by leading criminal lawyer Eugene Thureisingham, while a 3-person prosecution team was led by Deputy Public Prosecutor Han Ming Kwong. The stakes couldn't have been higher. Under Singapore's Penal Code Section 300, intentional murder carries a mandatory death penalty. Teo's defense team pursued 2 main strategies. First, they argued diminished responsibility, claiming Teo suffered from depression due to his financial pressures, which impaired his mental state during the murders. Private psychiatrist Jacob Rajesh supported this defense, stating that Teo's depression qualified him for diminished responsibility. The second defense was grave and sudden provocation. Thureisingham argued that Choong's insults and her decision to involve their daughter in humiliating Teo had provoked him beyond reasonable control. However, the prosecution painted a very different picture. DPP Han argued that Teo's actions were methodical and calculated, not the result of uncontrollable rage or mental illness. They pointed to his behavior during the 8 days after the murders, his ability to plan, deceive, and function normally, as evidence of his mental competency. Perhaps most damaging to Teo's case were Choong's phone messages, which showed that she had known about their financial problems since October 2016 and had wanted to help her husband resolve them. The messages revealed an affectionate relationship where both partners were optimistic about their future despite their difficulties. Prosecution psychiatrist Derek Yeo delivered devastating testimony, describing Teo's behavior as logical, goal-directed, and showed planning. Yeo noted that during the post-killing period, Teo maintained regular eating and sleeping patterns, watched videos, and even consumed adult content, hardly the behavior of someone in the grip of uncontrollable mental illness. On November 12, 2020, High Court Judge Kanan Ramesh delivered his verdict, guilty on both counts of murder. The judge found that Teo was not suffering from diminished responsibility or acting under sudden provocation. Instead, his actions were conscious, deliberate, and outcome-driven. The mandatory sentence was death. Teo's legal team didn't give up. In October 2021, they appealed to Singapore's Court of Appeal, once again arguing diminished responsibility and raising constitutional challenges to the murder statute. The 5-judge panel, led by Chief Justice Sundaresh Menon, carefully considered all arguments. On February 23, 2022, the Court of Appeal dismissed Teo's appeal unanimously. Justice Judith Prakash, delivering the verdict, confirmed that Teo's post-killing behavior was inconsistent with any claim of mental illness or diminished responsibility. Teo's final hope lay in a clemency petition to Singapore's president. However, this too was denied, closing the last avenue for avoiding his sentence. In his final years, Teo joined other death row inmates in challenging various aspects of Singapore's capital punishment system, including the post-appeal applications in Capital Cases Act and policies regarding legal representation. These challenges were unsuccessful, but they highlighted the systematic approach Singapore takes to ensure due process even in capital cases. On April 16, 2025, nearly 8 years after he murdered his wife and daughter, 49-year-old Teo Ghim Heng was executed by hanging at Changi Prison. The Singapore police force confirmed that the sentence had been carried out, noting that Teo had received full due process throughout his legal proceedings. Today, as we reflect on this tragedy, we remember not just the shocking nature of the crimes, but the innocent lives lost. Choong Pei Shan, a woman who loved her family and wanted to help solve their problems. 4-year-old Ning, whose only mistake was being born to a father who couldn't control his rage. And an unborn son who never had the chance to experience life. The Woodlands double murder serves as a stark reminder that financial pressure, while devastating, never justifies violence. There were resources available, people who could have helped, and alternatives to the path Teo chose. If you or someone you know is struggling with financial stress, relationship problems, or thoughts of violence, please reach out for help. There are always alternatives to tragedy. In the end, what began as an argument about school fees became one of Singapore's most shocking familicides, proving that in a moment of uncontrolled rage, entire families can be destroyed, and justice, while served, can never truly restore what was lost. Teo's execution closes the legal story, but the questions linger. How do debts, pride, and silence turn into violence? And how many other families, behind closed doors, are balancing on the same dangerous edge? I would like to hear your opinion about this case in the comments section below. Remember to approach these stories with respect for the victims and their families. Thank you for watching this examination of a tragic case. If this content was informative, please consider subscribing for more in-depth true crime analysis. See you in the next one, but till then, stay safe and don't forget to share your challenges with your friends and family. You will be surprised to see help coming earlier than you expect. One love.